I'll feed anybody, but I'm not for everybody. My name is Chef Derek Green, and I find people that have turned their life's experiences into ingredients they use to feed others. We're redefining soul food. These people have turned their adversities into their advantages. This is the Sauce of Life show, and let's go. Jennifer DeLia, welcome to the Sauce of Life. Will you please introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are?
I am the designer of my reality.
So the Sauce of Life show is about people that have taken their life experiences and they now use those as ingredients to feed others. Mm-hmm. They've turned their adversities into advantages. If you don't mind sharing some of the early, like, how did you become this person that now shapes your reality? Where did that start?
Very good question. It definitely started for me right out of the womb. And I'm sure before, I believe we choose our parents and we choose our circumstances. And so, but as far as this incarnation and this dimension, I would say, I was automatically a kid that could feel this nuance of life that felt very fluid. And later I learned I was tapping into quantum physics. But as a kid, I had this feeling that life was a dream. Okay. and really a dream, that it was some type of lucid dream projection or hologram or simulation or something like that. And I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake that. I didn't believe that linear time was a real thing. I felt past, present, future were overlapping dimensions and everything was happening simultaneously.
As a kid,
and I talked openly about it. I even gave speeches about it in school as I got older and high school. But as a little kid, I was like very aware.
So as a little kid, you were aware of that and able to express it.
Able to express it. I had my first, what I called out of body experience at age 5 that I could I'm sure it wasn't the first, but it was the first that I articulated to other people in my life.
Care to share?
And this is sort of my entry point into what became my passion and primary vocation as a filmmaker. Because I was seeing life in this cinematic way, that was really what led me to film. As far as the out-of-body experience, I was in kindergarten, and at some point, I completely traveled to the ceiling of the classroom, and I had this overall view of what was happening. And I felt like I was in this divine comedy because I actually had these thoughts of, like, how did we start raising our hand to talk? Like, why would we do such things? Why can't we just talk? And then who's this person in the front that gets to tell all these beings what to think or how things are created? And I wasn't mad about it, and I wasn't even judging it. I mean, I was 5, but they were real questions, and it felt absurd. It just felt completely absurd. And then I was noticing, movement, like how the limbs move. And everything just felt very, for lack of better words right now, kind of psychedelic, kind of this sense of strangeness, how this all is happening. And I was just kind of in this altered reality awareness and laughing while I was sitting in my chair participating. And I was just so aware of this dual kind of perspective that I was having. And I came back into my body, and I just couldn't wait to tell someone. I couldn't wait to tell someone that I essentially traveled and became the viewer of this movie. And it was just so incredibly exciting and magical. And so it became something I couldn't not share. Like, it didn't feel weird to me or anything.
Has it happened since then?
Oh, yeah. Now I can control it and do it on a dime. Yeah.
Yeah. Given the conversations that we've had, that makes so much sense now, because I consider you, for lack of a better word, like a savant in the realm of art and artistic expression. So whether being a director, whether being a producer, whether being an actress, whether being a poet, you have so many talents, and it is amazing. I've never met anyone that is as artistically expressive as you are, and the way that you can articulate the visions that you actually have in your head. So as a person literally with the sauce of life, trying to get people to understand that they can build their own life, that they can reset their paradigm to a world that they desire and put themselves on a frequency to bring that life into actualization or into being. And this is something that you've been doing since you were 5?
Sure. Yeah, we can say that. Yeah.
Something that adults struggle with even to this day. You have so many people that struggle even trying to figure out how they can escape depression or how they can pay their bill next week, not understanding that you get to shape the reality that you live in. And this is something that you just do.
You know, you bring up a couple interesting things, because there's definitely days where I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, you know, and I think that, you know, there is this kind of the illusion of polarity or the illusion of duality, this sort of blessing and curse, you know, idea. And the curse is really more of a challenge, which is part of the alchemy, you know? So I think that having that sort of extrasensory awareness, or however you want to term it, didn't always contribute to making things necessarily easier within the social construct. You know, I don't know. It's hard to say what contributes to what. I mean, obviously, everything's just part of the kind of recipe of our perception, you know, but I feel like it made me sometimes feel a bit alien or a bit of an outsider looking in, not really buying into the same things that everybody else seemed to. And even though I was a very socially accepted kid and I didn't really struggle, I mean, there were some moments, but overall, I would say socially, I was pretty at ease. There was this sense inside of me that I was not regular or something. And I had the facade of being just very, you know, confident about my perception. So again, anyone that knew me growing up, these were things I openly talked about. You often hear people that have these senses say that they masked it because it was, you know, confusing to feel so different. Where I was like, I wore it like that was my identity. That was all I wanted to talk about, you know? So everybody knew that I was in that realm, and any opportunity to give an oral presentation or read a certain book in school or whatever, it was always in this arena. So I didn't hide any of that, which I think helped a lot for the normalization of my experience. However, there was definitely this kind of pit in my stomach that I got more familiar with in my adult life. That was this feeling of isolation, and just not wanting to play by the same rules, and kind of on some level not being able to.
Well, if you're a unicorn, then you don't play by the same rules, and you will be isolated because you're a unicorn. Mm-hmm. You can fly, and you have this horn out of your head, and you can do all of these other things that others can't do. And yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. I look at you as a unicorn. Mm-hmm. You're that unique of an entity to me, mm-hmm. and I'm incredibly intrigued. You decided by age 17 to take a chance on yourself. And I'm very fascinated by that, because even now, as I coach adults, it's very difficult to get them to take a chance on themselves, to believe in themselves. Not only that, before you took that leap on yourself, you embraced your identity. You owned it. Like, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. Love me, hate me, I don't care. I'm going to live my reality, and I'm going to take this chance on myself. And you came to California, right?
I did. I left home from Kansas at 17, and I came to LA to pursue my career as a filmmaker. So, I mean, for me, there was no option. I just knew. I don't know exactly when I knew. I started out as a small kid doing drama and theater and loving the performance space. Although that wasn't my talent at that time. That didn't really click in until probably my early 20s when I really was able to access raw emotion. I think part of my experience too growing up, I grew up in what would be called an abusive, sometimes violent households. And I was oftentimes and almost all of the time in the role of the parent and the mediator for my parents and the protector of my baby brother. And that was a very natural role for me. So I didn't have the childhood experience of feeling at ease in my home and feeling comfortable. And in fact, I hated being home. So a lot of my time was spent in the future, so-called, visualizing the future. I was obsessed with the next chapter of my life. And I started keeping journals when I was 7 about literally the vision of what my life was going to look like. And I still have those journals, and pretty much everything in there has happened. What's funny is that the vision didn't go beyond a certain point.
Right.
So it's like everything happened that's in those journals. But now I'm in the phase where I didn't write about that. I didn't write about that next phase.
Oh, you got to catch up.
So it's, I know I am, but it's interesting. So I cultivated a strong sense of vision. That was what I was doing when I was being punished and in my room for endless days and things. I actually used my time to literally project myself into that other timeline. And so even though all this crap was happening in the home life, I was consistently excited because I knew exactly where I was going.
Wow.
So there was literally no choice. I saw life as a movie, so I needed to explore life as a movie. Like I had to go into making movies. I was a, poet at a young age. I was a writer. I was into art and just creativity. I was into quantum theory and things and Einstein, and also ego and emotions, how to access raw emotion in a way that's real and healthy and able to be expressed, not in the way that we were conditioned to in this dimension of reality, which is a lot of suppression, a lot of leaking energy, a lot of taking things out on people, a lot of just unconsciousness around what is actually happening in the body and what is actually happening with emotions. And so I could have easily gone into psychology, or I could have easily gone into something in that arena. But because of this need to create in an artistic way, I took my desire to study human behavior and study ego and what is happening with insecurity and emotion into, character development and into story, and realizing that I could create a world and a safe environment for people to express freely. That's what you do as an actor. So essentially, I kind of stepped into the role of a shaman as a director, which isn't always the case, but that's how I do it.
But it's not just the actors that you're doing that with, because first, I'm happy that you didn't go into the field of psychology or anything else. I am thankful that you chose this path that you're on, because having been able to privately screen some of your work, I am just like blown away, especially with Mary Pickford. Mm-hmm. And as I look at what you've done and have been doing with this film, it's this ability to facilitate the expression of others. The lighting guy, the sound guy, the visual effects person, the actors and actresses, how you're getting them to perform at their best and allowing them to freely, truly embody the character. And you're even in there expressing yourself. And I believe you have a masterpiece, but I'll let you talk about this film, please.
Oh, well, thank you so much for recognizing all of that. It's definitely been a huge, huge journey with the film. It's about Mary Pickford, who is the mother of Hollywood and birthed, essentially this culture that has become so global and consuming. I think she had a sense of it going in that direction, but you don't really know when you're just birthing. It's like being an entrepreneur. When you're just birthing something, you might have a sense, but nothing came before her. There's a line in the movie that no one was as famous as Jesus until Mary, because before that moment there was only religion as far as worship and story and icon, and then came Hollywood. So it's very multi-layered in terms of how I went about executing this vision. It's not a conventional biopic. It's been 13 years in the making, and it's definitely more of an Alice in Wonderland kind of shamanic journey of the psyche and the discovery of art and what art is. And they were really, feeling into that and channeling. I mean, it was all just completely new. And they were really pulling from the earth and the ether of, all this code and ideas and things, and surrealism was born and the avant-garde. And so for me, it just was so clear that Pickford's a kindred spirit of mine, and that she would absolutely not want this to be linear and conventional, that she wanted to be known as an artist. She was very known as a pioneer, very, respected for her business acumen. I mean, she was earning more than her male counterparts in 1919. She founded United Artists. She founded the Academy. She was basically running Hollywood at a moment in time. And to her, that's cool. But what she's the most committed to was her advocacy for artists and visionaries, and pushing the medium and provoking consciousness and not creating machine-made content. That was a term they used already in 1919. So you can imagine if they considered it machine-made in 1919, where we're at now.
Right.
So there's no way I could do it that way, And plus, it's just not my style. It's not who I am. It has to be interdimensional, because I don't see time as linear. Now, there's a linear narrative you can track, if that's what you lock into. That's totally cool. That's there. When she was born, what her childhood was like, what she created, what her love stories were, that's all in there. But then it's surrounded by this environment of, you almost don't know whose story it is, because there's these different layers. And my character is like channeling, and kind of tapped into the things that she can't say in real time. So there's this emotional layer, there's a spiritual layer, there's the physical 3D narrative layer. So that's very important to me, that it kind of can be disorienting at times, because that's how the human psyche actually works. It doesn't work in linear time. You look at an object, you go somewhere. You think a thought, you go somewhere else. You're even just within your mind space, you're in many places at once. So it's important to me as a storyteller to honor that. I find the linear structure to be very confining. And I think it actually keeps us identified with cause and effect in our personal lives. This happened, so it led to that. This happened, so it led to that, which is a cool way to tell story, but not the essential nature of the unfolding of life. And we get very caught up in, this happened to me, so now I'm like this.
Right.
And we're very identified with that. And it's actually quite enslaving. I find it a form of slavery. Which sounds so dramatic, but it's like an imprisonment, to the mind.
But it is imprisonment. It's so interesting that you say that, because we haven't talked about that. One of the things that I tell people is that, or talk with people about, is they do keep themselves prisoner, especially to their past. And there's one speech that I give where I begin it by saying, you are not what you've done. Mm-hmm. Right. And so many people have these skeletons in the closet, is the cliche term, skeletons in the closet. And it's like, that's not a reflection of who I am necessarily. That's something that I did at a specific point in my life, but that's not a reflection of who I am. So I try not to become trapped by the life that I've lived, or by what society wants to define me as, or how they want to define me. And looking at the film, First, it's something that you have to go back and rewatch and then watch again, because every single time every time that I've seen any part of it, there's something that I missed, and I was cognizant that I missed it, but there was something that was more important for my attention at that time. So now that I gather and gain the understanding of this particular part, I can go back and watch again for that other part. Because you have so many layers. When you have that many creatives operating in unison to build a masterpiece guided by someone who literally builds the vision and creates worlds. It is a beautiful, it is a masterpiece. It's a work of art. It's a masterpiece. In my restaurant, so I have a restaurant, Waffles and Whatnot, and in there, right now I have a Dominican chef. He does Dominican, Filipino, Caribbean. He does Hawaiian, like Polynesian style. There's a Filipino chef. There's a Japanese chef. We have a Thai chef. The point to all of that is they get in there and it can be a simple dish that's supposed to come out of the kitchen. And when those creatives get together, the flavor profiles that come out, it may look like something that you eat at any other restaurant, but then you bite into it and you're like, what the hell is this? I feel that that's what your movie is, where you're going, this is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. In the movie, she says something that stood out to me, because one of the lines that I use in my speeches is that, it's actually, I begin with this. I'll say, my name is Chef Derek Green. My name doesn't matter, but my purpose does. There's a line in there where she's like, no, my name, she's demanding a raise, and my name needs to be in the ending credits. People don't know me. And I think, if I recall, there was an incident on the subway or something where somebody was staring at her, and she's like, they don't know my name. And I'm more than the lady with the curly hair.
Nice. Good memory.
Right?
Yeah.
That originated in your mind, though. You caught that from her story. That was something that was a detail that you picked out. And this movie is a beautiful, beautiful journey through your mind, because you're the one directing everything. Where do you get all that? And how do you know how to express all of this, and to mold others to be able to express as well?
Wow. It's a big question. How do I know how to create such a thing?
Yes.
Essentially.
You see a world, you envision a world, but you are incredibly gifted at taking the vision that you have in here and putting it in a format that I can enjoy it. How?
A lot of trust, because I think in the way that I create, there's a lot of spontaneity and a lot of trust. So essentially, I steep in the world of, let's say, Mary Pickford in ways that maybe other filmmakers and creators wouldn't. They would have their own process. So I'm all over the world. I'm meeting everyone that might have known her. I'm meeting psychics, and I'm going into shamanic ritual. I just, spent a lot of time in her energy, in her spirit, not just doing the academic research, but really consciously channeling, which then became kind of unconscious in a way, where there was a point where I crossed that threshold and she was just in me. So I find myself choosing the foods that she liked, or doing without even thinking about it, ending up places where she was, and just our lives merging completely, to the point that then I can trust myself, to direct this. Now I don't even have to think. I just kind of am her at that point. And so with that, it offers a lot of creative freedom. And I would make, a lot of vision boards and create whatever visual references I could for the, other artists I'm bringing on board. And language is a superpower I've had since before I was 1, I was very verbal.
8 months.
Yeah. That's the word on the street. Yeah. And so with that, I can just, now I'm in the world, now I am her, and I have this use of language, and I'm very visual. So I can bring, if you're the potential artist, costumer, whoever, I can bring you in to that energy sphere and start just downloading you. And it's not technical. It's not like, oh, I want the camera to move here at this moment, or with an actor, please cry here. None of that, really. Maybe later there's moments where I'm like, oh, I do that. But overall, I want whoever I'm working with to get as invested energetically and kind of leave the almost the technical and the rational behind for a while. That's really hard to get technicians to do. Yeah. They really don't want to do that. They really don't trust that they can think freely and creatively. So I spend a good part of the beginning of onboarding somebody just exercising their trust of themselves as an artist.
Right.
To then where we start becoming telepathic at some point. Like I download them, meditate with them, create an environment where they just can steep in and sink in. And then by the time we get, to the set or into a few days, we're just sharing thoughts. And then they're taking my vision and going beyond. They're doing things they've never done before. And like I said, I worked with some of Spielberg's team. Mitch Dubin was one of our camera operators. Dwight Campbell, our gaffer. Dan Neese was with David Lynch for over 20 years. I mean, he was as crazy of an artist as me. So that was like perfect. So he was kind of my partner also in translating the technical of my wild vision. That was like a perfect alignment. But yeah, a lot of those people that they'd been around the business for decades working on some of the best films made were very clearly stifled in their connection to their own artistry, and were able to express that at some point, that they just hadn't felt like an artist in so long until they were on that set. And that was really surprising to hear, just because I didn't know. You don't know how people are feeling about their experience. I could tell everybody was having fun. But that, to go back to your original question, part of the ability to communicate it is at first really bringing people in. It's not like a job. Like you're being invited into this world, and it's different, and it's playful, and it's colorful. And so I want to riff on that without even talking about the movie. Like, what does playful mean to you? What does colorful mean to you? What do these sensory concepts mean to you? So then we can even establish a shorthand language so we can move while we're there, because it is so out of the box. So it was interesting. And then even the sets, we built 42 sets, and they were moving like in theatrical ways. And, I didn't get to see most of the sets until the day we were going to shoot on it, or the night before, just because of the tightness of the schedule. So we were blocking as if it was a play right before the first shot of the day. And sometimes we'd block and I'd just want to change everything because I hadn't even seen the set till that moment. So then they'd literally all hands on deck to like change up the whole setup. So there was a lot of trust that went into that. I mean, the AD was sometimes going to lose his mind because his job is to keep us on a schedule. So for the first half of the shoot, we were consistently behind in our schedule because of this. And I just promised him that if he allowed me to be behind for a number of days, that I would get us caught up in the second half of the shoot, which he believed was absolutely physically impossible, that by the last day we would not have shot everything. And so one day I just asked him for his clipboard, and I just went into AD mode, and I was able to do it where I could give the actors and everybody a lot of freedom to play up until lunch. And then after lunch, we were going to power through. But by the time we got to lunch, they were so in it that it was perfect. And so the second half of the shoot, we just completely caught up. The AD was like in shock. He had never seen anything like that before because we were so behind, according to him, that we should have never been able to make that up.
But it's because he doesn't know who you are.
He didn't, but he does now.
Oh, he does now.
And, you know, I have to give him credit just to say that, like, with all of that anxiety, because ADs can be yellers and they can be assholes and there can be a lot of kind of dictatorship that comes through an AD role. He really did get that there was something magical going on. So he had that angst and he controlled it really well because he did not want to ruin the vibe. Yeah. Like, the vibe was so high on that set. Even though shit was hitting the fan in the production office, like we had a fake investor, the union was trying to shut us down. Everything under the sun was going wrong in the production office. And I just said, the set is a sacred space. No producer is allowed on set if they're stressed out. Consider the set a vacation. So they were literally not allowed on set if they were stressed out. They had to stay off the set. And one woman I fired because she came as the line producer. She came on the set 3 times stressed out. I could feel her stress.
Yeah.
And she had every right to be stressed, but it was like, just stay away.
Right.
I said 3 times and she's out. My producers were like, we're not firing the line producer in the middle of the shoot. I was like, this is a no stress zone. If she can't, she was like a magnet. Like, she couldn't stay away. And her job was in the production office. It was like, why are you here? And I didn't even talk to her because I stayed in my happy place, you know, with the actors and stuff, but I could feel her. I'd be like over here talking to an actor and she'd be entering like a mile away and I would feel it. And so we fired her. She couldn't believe it.
Wow.
It was really fun. Turned out there were some other reasons to fire her too, which we won't get into, but yeah, what were you going to say?
There's a, so I'll tell you this and then I'll tell you what I wrote, but there's a concept that I have that says stand guard at the doorway of your mind. And as I mentor people, I tell them that because a lot of people allow themselves to be inundated by whatever's happening at the time. They just allow anything to enter their space and change their vibratory rate. And they don't understand that resets their energy for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes for the rest of their lives, if they don't learn to control it, to stand guard at the doorway of their mind. So you are the walking embodiment of a person who stands guard at the doorway of their mind. Mm-hmm. And that freedom and the fact that you said that this set is a sacred place, don't bring that energy in here and you enforce that. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
I have a lot of respect for you. Having spent 21 years in the military, understanding what it's like to herd cats and dealing with, you know, at one point I had 53 soldiers that were directly reporting to me. That's 53 personalities, 53 backgrounds, 53 sets of life experiences, adversities, different levels of training, perceptions, 53 different people that hear something different when I say something. If I walk into the building and I give just a set of ingredients on the table and I ask everybody to bake me a cookie, I'm going to literally get 53 different cookies. Mm-hmm. I have never operated at the level that you have. And in my 21 years in the military, I've never seen anyone orchestrate people and the resources and dreams and visions in the way that you do. So I know we've already beat that horse, but I just want you guys to know you are the shit. Right?
Thank you.
Seriously, at the way that you do that.
It takes one to know one, by the way.
Thank you. I accept that. What I wrote was steep in the world. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that you're great at, and I'm going to go back and watch this video myself and start taking notes on it because you trigger so many thoughts, but I refuse to interrupt until this little boy inside me is just like, no, ask the question. But the visual that I have when you said you steeped in her world, I went on this tangent inside going, is she the water or is she the tea bag? Are you the energy, the hot water that exists in that purest form, waiting for something else to come in, or are you the tea bag? And eventually I think I settled on that you're the tea. You're the tea that goes in because you change whatever environment you go into. It's impossible to be in your presence and hear you speak and to see your vision or experience you fully without walking away changed. That's what I feel. So you're the tea bag. And I just needed to write that in there. Like, got it.
I like that.
Steep in their world. You said another phrase to me as we were talking before off camera. You said that you were having contractions while also experiencing being born.
Yes, I still am.
Will you please elaborate on that? And did I slaughter that?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I feel like I had thought of that before this moment, but the moment that it was like screaming at me was about a year ago when we screened this version of the film for the first time in public for about 300 people. So I was seeing my character, my role in the film, and that layer of the story was shot 5 years after the principal photography with the main actors. So that was the missing piece that I got to later shoot, actually at the United Artists Theater that Pickford created. That's in downtown LA. It's iconic. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. You should definitely check it out.
You give me a tour.
Yes, I will give you a tour. So the screening last year was the first time I was watching with an audience the movie with that added layer. And I couldn't have predicted the experience I was going to have. And I was sitting, of course I was dressed up, but for some reason I gravitated to sitting on the floor in the back of the theater. And my friend was in town. Thankfully, she is a spiritual doula. Just happened to be there and sat with me. And essentially, I was like writhing on the floor of this theater. Like I was like in some kind of pain. And I was kind of tossing and turning. And I would like sit up and peek at the movie, but I could obviously hear everything. And I'm not exaggerating. And I didn't care who got up and went to the bathroom or who saw. I had no kind of consciousness of being, quote unquote, in public. I was just having this very visceral experience, reaction, response. I don't know. She was holding my hand and like stroking my hair and like kind of caressing my arm, just like you would for as a doula in a birthing experience, like just kind of trying to soothe my energy. I couldn't really obviously reflect on it in the moment. I just went with it. And it was later, I mean, and then what was hilarious was when the movie ended and they called me up for the Q&A. I just snapped out of it, went right down. I was like I was in a completely different mode, you know, and it was the most profound Q&A. I mean, it was literally crazy, like the questions people had and the things they shared from watching it. And really intense Q&A. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, what'd you shoot on? It was like people were giving dissertations, you know, and I was learning things from what people got from it. And then at the after party, I was able to socialize and have conversations somewhat, but I was in this sort of dream state, kind of like a fog. The afterbirth kind of.
Yeah, okay.
But it still didn't feel like it was out, you know? So maybe it's like when you get a break, like from the hard labor or something. It was just like this kind of, almost like woozy, you know? But then I had to leave, like in the middle of the party, and I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing anything. And I was just at some point like, we have to go. And so Alex went to get the car and whatever. I tried to say goodbye to a few people. And then in the car, I was super nauseous, which is not a norm for me on any level, like with digestion, even with over drinking. Like I've just never been a nauseous vomit kind of person. So it was like very strange, just energy. And I couldn't sit up. And she had to help me walk into the apartment. I'm telling you, I didn't have any drinks. Okay. I get in the bathtub. She gets in the bathtub with me and is like massaging me, and we're both like, this is a non-sexual experience, and she's just literally being a doula.
Yeah.
All the way to the point of I'm laying in bed finally, and she guides me through a meditation, which became like a hypnosis. And at the end, when she counted backwards and got to 0, I like snapped back and I was like, oh my God, I'm hungry. And she was like, Jen, what has been going on with you for the last like 5 hours? Can you tell me? So I was suddenly back.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, I feel like I'm birthing myself. And I was having this awareness of the contractions and this feeling of like hanging out of the womb. And I just like, it just was so real for me. And I talked about contractions for a long time with the creative process. But this experience of actually going into labor, but not getting it fully, not completing, like it didn't feel complete, and it still doesn't feel complete. Like some would say, well, you just need to cut the cord. It's like you've birthed, but now it's still hanging on, you know? Like imagine birthing a baby and like not cutting the cord for 10 years or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be really uncomfortable.
I'm an advocate for releasing the movie, just so you know.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I don't know if that was too much graphic detail. Was that, I had to, you know, share the experience. So I think the creative process is oftentimes by many artists and visionaries likened to the birthing process. So this was maybe taking it one step further.
Okay. No, it's not too vivid of detail or anything like this, because I've already said that you're one of the greatest expressive people that I've ever met. Mm-hmm. So if I were to cut you off or anything like this, then like, why would I do that?
I'm just checking in.
You know, why would I do
that?
Here's a question for you. Do you think that, okay, so I'm thinking about the Gladys Marie as a young girl when she was getting ready to be moved to the other family, right? And then she decided that she's Mary Pickford. She switched, and maybe I'm mixing it up. You're the expert on her. I guess it's a
she
question.
Was renamed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's a question of, do you think that she would feel worthy of the amount of work and dedication and the way that you've captured her life? Would she feel worthy of it? Because I'm looking at it and going, this is amazing. Or would she like think that you're overhyping who she is or her importance, her significance? You know what I mean? Like,
I do know what you mean. No, I feel like she is completely producing this and completely on board, and at this stage of her spiritual journey is ready to be honored and ready to emerge in today's, you know, popular culture and to do what she can as the roots of Hollywood to enlighten people to the beginning of something which at the beginning was really so pure. And I mean, we're talking the very beginning for like 2 seconds, but their intentions were, you know, to preserve some kind of notion of creative integrity. And again, not dumbing down content, and also tapping into so much ancient code and wisdom. She transcended age, ethnicity, and gender in the role she played and felt that was important. I mean, imagine, these are things we are up in arms about today.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I think on a spiritual level, she knows this is the time to unveil the roots of Hollywood.
Okay.
And I don't think she really even sees it to be about her.
What is next for you?
Wow. Joy. So much joy. Work-wise, I mean, definitely the release of the film, definitely some new projects that are in the works, you know, playing with some pretty provocative themes. And one of them, which I told you about a little bit, has to do with my dad and our relationship and this federal case that he was involved with and the notoriety that got. That's all being turned into a series. So I'm giving some people the rights to that and divulging, you know, loads of information. I think for me, I'm being selective. I'm kind of watching the unfolding of things. I'm interested in forming a new studio model that encapsulates everything I've learned about how to create the infrastructure for visionaries to be able to own their voice and feel empowered and not have to dumb things down and not have to adhere to formula to help liberate the collective psyche. I think art is the heartbeat of humanity. And it's really detrimental when artists are not creating to their optimal potential because they feel like like it won't sell, or they need to create in a different way in order to be accepted. So I want to create the infrastructure that supports visionaries to not have to feel contained or controlled in that way.
Wow. That's a beautiful mission. That's, yeah.
Sorry,
I appreciate that.
Voice got a little raspy there.
It's you. It's who you are. But, okay, so final question. If this were the only time that someone would see you, or if this were the last time that you and I would speak, what is the one thing or something that you would want me or someone else to know?
That you are the designer of your reality. That you really actually are, at least in how I see the world. And sovereignty is a real thing. And you get to explore and discover what that means to you. And I would just hope that you do explore that.
Okay. Jennifer DeLia, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. This has been an honor.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.